The screams filled the air like music to Captain Zethkar's ears. He stood 12 feet tall on his 6 razor-sharp legs, his black shell gleaming under the alien sun. His forearms moved with deadly grace as he watched another city burn. The Meridian people ran in every direction, their fear feeding his hunger like the sweetest meal. "Another world falls to the Kithara," he said to his lieutenant, Vexthal. His voice sounded like grinding metal through his breathing holes. "How many does this make?" 847 star systems, Captain," Vexthal replied. His smaller form trembled with excitement as he tasted the terror in the air. The Meridians lasted only 3 days. They barely fought back. Zethkar nodded his massive head. The Kithara had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. No species could stand against them. They were perfect hunters, perfect killers. Their black shells could stop any weapon. Their ability to phase through solid matter made them impossible to trap. Most importantly, they fed on fear itself. The more afraid their enemies became, the stronger the Kithara grew. The captain walked through the burning city, stepping over the bodies of fallen Meridians. These blue-skinned people had been peaceful traders. They built beautiful art and sang lovely songs. Now they were nothing but food for the Kithara hunger. "Sir," called a scout from above. The young Kithara had just returned from deep space patrol. "I bring news from the Outer Rim." Zethkar looked up at the flying warrior. "Speak." "We found another system, Captain. A small yellow star with several planets. The 3rd planet has life. Blue and green world with billions of creatures." "Good," Zethkar said. "Did you deliver our message?" The scout landed with a heavy thud. His shell was damaged in several places. Burn marks covered his arms. "Yes, Captain. We told them to surrender or die. But something went wrong." Vexthal stepped forward. "What do you mean, wrong?" "They destroyed 3 of our scout ships, sir. Shot them right out of space. We barely escaped." Zethkar felt a strange emotion. Surprise. It had been centuries since any species had fought back against his scouts. Most worlds surrendered the moment they saw a Kithara ship. Those who tried to fight usually gave up after the first battle. "What did they say?" he asked. The scout trembled. "They sent back a message, Captain. Just 3 words, and those words were, 'Come and take it.'" Silence fell over the burning city. Even the crackling flames seemed quieter. Zethkar had heard many responses to Kithara demands. Begging, crying, offers of treasure, promises of slaves, but never defiance. "Never challenge. Interesting," he said slowly. "Tell me about these creatures." "They call themselves humans, Captain. They look weak. Only 2 arms, 2 legs, soft pink or brown skin with no shell. They should be easy prey." Zethkar clicked his mandibles together, a sound like breaking glass. "If they are so weak, how did they destroy our ships?" "I don't know, sir. They used some kind of explosive weapons, fast ships that moved in strange patterns. And Captain..." The scout paused. "Yes?" "They were laughing, sir. As they fought us, we could hear them laughing over their communication channels." Vexthal made a disgusted noise. "Laughing? What prey species laughs when facing death?" "Perhaps they are insane," Zethkar said. "Mental illness would explain their strange behavior. No matter. Gather the 3rd Fleet. We will deal with these humans personally." "All of the 3rd Fleet, Captain?" Vexthal asked. "For one small world?" "Yes. If they destroyed 3 scout ships, they might have more weapons. Better to be prepared." Zethkar looked up at the alien stars. "Besides, it has been too long since we faced real resistance." The other species were becoming boring. 3 days later, the Kithara 3rd Fleet moved through space toward the human system. 150 ships filled with the galaxy's most feared warriors. Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Death's Shadow. He could smell the excitement from his crew. They were hungry for fear, ready to feast. "Captain," his navigation officer called. "We have reached the edge of their system. No sign of their fleet. Scan all planets. Where are they hiding?" "Sir, we are receiving another transmission from the 3rd planet." "Put it on screen." The image that appeared showed a human female. She had short gray hair and wore some kind of uniform. Her face looked calm, almost bored. Behind her, Zethkar could see other humans working at strange machines. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy," she said. "You are entering human space without permission. Leave now or we will consider you hostile." Zethkar stepped forward. His image would terrify any normal species. His massive form, his glowing red eyes, his razor teeth. But this human showed no fear. She actually looked annoyed. "I am Captain Zethkar of the Kythera Collective," he said in his most frightening voice. "Your world belongs to us now. Surrender immediately and your death will be quick." The human tilted her head. "Let me check my schedule." She looked down at something off-screen. "Nope, not happening today, or any day." "You do not understand," Zethkar continued. "We have conquered 847 star systems. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. You cannot resist us," Admiral Chen smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Well, that's about to change. Boys, show our guests what we think of their demands." The screen went dark. Moments later, alarms began ringing throughout the Kythera fleet. "Captain," his weapons officer shouted. "Multiple contacts approaching fast." "Where did they come from?" "Everywhere, sir." They were hiding behind their planet's moon in asteroid fields, even inside gas clouds. Human ships poured out of hiding like angry insects. They were smaller than Kythera vessels, but moved with incredible speed. As they attacked, strange sounds came over the communication channels. Music, shouting, and yes, laughter. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," came the human voice. "Remember, these bugs think they're the toughest things in space. Let's show them what happens when predators meet humans." The battle was unlike anything Zethkar had ever experienced. Human ships did not retreat when faced with superior firepower. They charged forward, firing everything they had. When their weapons failed, they tried to ram Kythera vessels. When their ships were damaged beyond repair, the human pilots laughed and made jokes as they died. "These creatures are insane," Vexthal whispered, watching a human fighter crash into a Kythera cruiser. "They fight like they want to die." "No," Zethkar said, beginning to understand. "They fight like they want to live. But more than that, they fight like they enjoy it." For the first time in 3,000 years, the Kythera fleet took casualties. Not just damage, but actual destroyed ships with dead warriors. The humans fought with a fury that the galaxy's apex predators had never encountered. When the battle ended, the Kythera had won, but it was not the easy victory they expected. 15 ships were destroyed, dozens more damaged. Hundreds of warriors were dead. Zethkar stared at the floating wreckage of human ships. Inside each piece of metal had been creatures willing to die just to hurt their enemies. "What kind of species produced such fighters?" "Captain," Vexthal said quietly. "What do we do now?" Zethkar clicked his mandibles. For the first time in his long life, he was not sure. The humans had lost this battle, but they had made the Kythera pay for their victory, and something told him this war was just beginning. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of Luna Station, watching the damage report scroll across her screen. The first battle with the Kythera had cost them 43 ships and over 8,000 lives. But they had also done something no other species in the galaxy had managed in 3,000 years. They had made the monsters bleed. "Admiral," Lieutenant Commander James Park called from his station. "We're receiving another transmission from the alien fleet." "Put it through." Captain Zethkar's terrifying form appeared on the main screen. His red eyes glowed with anger. Behind him, Chen could see other Kythera moving around what looked like the bridge of their flagship. "Human Admiral," Zethkar said, "you fought well for prey animals, but this was only a small taste of our power. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick." Chen leaned back in her chair. "You know, Bugface, you keep saying that word. Surrender. I don't think it means what you think it means." Several human officers chuckled. Zethkar's mandibles clicked together, and what Chen had learned was a sign of irritation. "You lost nearly 50 ships in one battle," the Kythera captain continued. "We lost only 15. Simple math shows you cannot win." "Math was never my best subject," Chen replied. "But I did learn something interesting from our first meeting. You guys aren't as tough as you think you are." "Impossible. The Kythera are the apex predators of this galaxy." "Maybe. But you've been hunting sheep for so long you forgot what wolves look like." The transmission ended with a harsh burst of static. Chen turned to her staff officers. "Status report." Major Rodriguez, her intelligence chief, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we've been analyzing the wreckage from their ships. The good news is their technology isn't magical. Their hull plating is strong, but not impossible to penetrate. Their phase-shifting ability seems to have limits. And the bad news? They're bringing more friends. Our deep space sensors show massive fleet movements heading toward Earth. At least 500 ships, maybe more." Chen nodded. She had expected this. The Kythera would not accept defeat from what they saw as a lesser species. "How long do we have?" 2 weeks, Admiral. Maybe 3 if they stop to gather more ships." "Good. That gives us time to prepare a proper welcome." Chen looked around the room at her officers. Gentlemen, ladies, we're about to face the most feared species in the galaxy. They've conquered nearly 1,000 star systems. They feed on fear itself, and they think we're just another bunch of helpless prey animals. What are your orders, Admiral? Asked Captain Williams, commander of the Mars Defense Force. Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. We're going to show them why Earth is called a death world, and why humans don't make good victims. Across the solar system, humanity prepared for war. Every ship that could fly was armed with the heaviest weapons human technology could produce. Asteroid mining stations were converted into weapons platforms. Even civilian vessels were loaded with nuclear warheads and volunteer crews. But the most important preparations were not weapons or ships. They were something the Kithera could not understand. Human nature itself was being weaponized. On Mars, Colonel Martinez briefed his troops. Listen up, Marines. These aliens think they can scare us into giving up. They've been doing it for thousands of years to other species, but they've never faced humans before. What makes us different, sir? Asked Sergeant Kim. We're crazy, Martinez replied. Every other intelligent species in the galaxy evolved on nice, safe worlds. Plenty of food, gentle weather, no major predators. But humans? We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, killer animals, natural disasters. Earth spent millions of years teaching us that if something wants to hurt you, you hurt it back twice as hard. The Marines nodded. They understood. Every human child learned about their ancestors who had survived saber-toothed tigers, hurricanes, and each other. Humans were not evolved to be prey. They were evolved to be survivors. In the asteroid belt, mining crews worked around the clock to prepare surprises for the Kithera fleet. Chief Engineer Anderson supervised the installation of engines on large asteroids. When the aliens arrived, they would find that some rocks could move very fast in unexpected directions. Chief, called Engineer Patel. Are you sure this will work? Anderson wiped sweat from his forehead. Nope, but that's never stopped humans before. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? We could all die horribly. Well, yeah, but we'll take some of those bug things with us. On Earth itself, Admiral Chen received reports from around the globe. Every nation had contributed ships, weapons, and volunteers. Old enemies had put aside their differences to face the alien threat. Humans had always been good at fighting each other, but they were even better at fighting together against outsiders. Admiral, her aide announced, the President is here to see you. President Harrison entered the command center looking tired but determined. Sarah, tell me we have a chance. We have a chance, sir. Not a good one, but a chance, and what do you need? Time, mostly. And the authority to do some things that might be considered war crimes if we were fighting other humans. Harrison raised an eyebrow. Such as? These aliens feed on fear. They get stronger when their enemies are afraid. So we need to make sure our people aren't afraid. We need them angry instead. And how do we do that? Chen gestured to the communications officer. Show him the footage from Meridia Prime. The main screen filled with images from the Kithera conquest. Burning cities, families running in terror, children crying as monsters stalked them through the streets. The Kithera had recorded it all, broadcasting their victories across the galaxy to spread fear. They want us to see this, Chen explained. They want us to know what happens to species that resist them. But humans don't react to threats the way other species do. President Harrison watched the footage, his face growing harder with each image. No, we don't, Sarah. You have whatever authority you need. Show these things what happens when someone threatens Earth. 2 weeks later, the Kithera fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. Over 800 ships, the largest force they had ever assembled against a single world. Captain Zethkar stood on his bridge, confident that this time there would be no resistance. Captain, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the human planet. Put it through. Admiral Chen appeared on screen again. But this time she was not alone. Behind her stood representatives from every human nation. Military officers, political leaders, even some civilians. All of them wore the same expression of grim determination. Captain Zethkar, Chen began, we've been learning about your people. How you've spent 3,000 years conquering peaceful species. How you feed on fear and terror. How you think that makes you the apex predators of the galaxy. Zethkar clicked his mandibles. It does make us apex predators, human. Soon you will understand. See, that's where you made your mistake, Chen continued. You've been hunting prey for so long, you forgot there are other kinds of predators out there. You hunt species that run when threatened, but humans don't run. We fight. Your small fleet cannot stand against us. Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. You're right. We can't win a straight fight against 800 ships, so we're not going to fight fair. Behind her, the other humans began to smile as well. It was not a pleasant sight. You see, Chen said, you made the mistake of threatening our families, our children, our home, and humans have a very simple rule about that, which is, nobody hurts our pack and lives to tell about it. The transmission ended. Moments later, alarms began ringing throughout the Cathara fleet as the humans revealed their true nature. The prey had become the predators and the hunt was about to begin. The Cathara war fleet spread across the human solar system like a dark cloud. Captain Zethkar divided his forces carefully. The main battle group would attack Earth directly. Smaller fleets would capture the other planets. Within days, this system would be another conquest in the long history of Cathara dominance. Captain, Lieutenant Vexthul reported from his station, the humans have pulled their ships back to defend their home world. They're not trying to protect their other planets. Good, Zethkar replied. Fear is making them act foolishly. Send the Mind Reapers to their colonies first. Let them taste terror before we arrive. The Mind Reapers were the Kythera's most feared weapon. Elite warriors who specialized in psychological warfare. They could project pure terror into the minds of their enemies. No species had ever resisted them. They would break human will before the main battle even began. Commander Kralvex led 50 Mind Reapers toward the human colony on Mars. His ship, the Soul Crusher, was designed for one purpose, to harvest fear and despair from entire populations. As they approached the red planet, he prepared to feast on human terror. Sir, his pilot called, we're receiving a transmission from the colony. Ignore it. Begin the fear projection. But the transmission came through anyway. The screen showed a human male in military uniform. He had dark skin and wore the kind of confident smile that Kralvex had learned to associate with prey that did not yet understand their situation. Hello there, space bugs, the human said. I'm Colonel Martinez, commander of Mars Colony Defense Force. We know what you are and what you do. You feed on fear, right? Well, I have some bad news for you. Kralvex activated his fear projectors. Waves of pure terror should have been flooding into the human's mind. The colonel should have been screaming by now, begging for mercy. Instead, he continued talking. See, you picked the wrong species to try that trick on. Humans don't break when we're scared. We get angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous things in the universe. The fear projectors were at maximum power now. Kralvex himself could feel the terror energy flowing from his ship. It should have been enough to paralyze an entire city. But the human just kept smiling. Boys, Colonel Martinez called to someone off-screen. Are you getting this? These things are actually trying to scare us. Laughter came from the background. Human laughter. But it was not the laughter of fear or madness. It was the laughter of predators who had found new prey. Sir? Kralvex's weapons officer reported, his voice shaking. The fear projectors are having no effect. If anything, the humans seem more excited now. Kralvex stared at his instruments. This was impossible. Every sentient species in the galaxy was vulnerable to Kythera fear projection. It was a fundamental law of psychology. Fear was universal. Colonel Martinez, he said through the communication channel. I am Commander Kralvex of the Mind Reapers. You will surrender now or watch your colony burn. You know what your problem is? Martinez replied. You've been picking on sheep for so long you forgot about wolves. But that's okay. We're about to give you a refresher course. The transmission ended. Moments later, the Mars surface erupted with weapon fire. But these were not normal defensive weapons. Humans had turned their mining equipment into weapons of war. Massive drilling lasers designed to cut through solid rock now targeted Cathara ships. Industrial explosives meant for asteroid mining became guided missiles. Evasive action, Kralvex ordered. But his ships were built for psychological warfare, not conventional battle. They were lightly armored and slow. Human weapons tore through them like paper. Worse than the physical damage was the psychological effect. The Mind Reapers could feel human emotions through their psychic connection, but instead of fear, they tasted something that made them sick. Anticipation. Joy. The pure predatory pleasure of the hunt. They're enjoying this, Vexthul whispered in horror. The humans are actually enjoying combat. 3 Mind Reaper ships exploded under human fire. As each one died, the surviving Kithara could hear human voices over their communication channels, cheering, celebrating, making jokes about roasted bug meat and alien barbecue. Commander Kralvex tried to phase his ship through solid matter to escape the weapons fire, but humans had been watching Kithara tactics for weeks now. They had learned to predict the phase-shifting patterns. Explosive traps waited in the exact spots where Kithara ships would rematerialize. "This is impossible," Kralvex said as his ship shuddered under another impact. "They're just primitives from a single world. We are the apex predators of the galaxy." "Sir," his navigator reported, "we have lost 18 ships. The humans are closing in on our position." Through the main viewer, Kralvex could see human ships approaching. They moved in coordinated packs like hunting animals surrounding their prey. And on their communication channels, he could hear them talking to each other. "Alpha leader to Beta Squadron, we've got 3 bugs trying to run. Cut them off." "Copy that, Alpha. Charlie Squadron, swing wide and hit them from behind. All units, remember what these things did to the Meridians. So mercy, no prisoners." The humans fought like a pack of predators. Each ship supported the others. When one was damaged, 2 more would cover its retreat. When they found weakness in Kithra defenses, every human ship in the area converged on that spot. But what truly disturbed Kralvex was their attitude. These humans were not fighting desperately for survival. They were not driven by fear or hatred. They were having fun. They treated war like a game, and they were very good at it. "Commander," his weapons officer called. "Human boarding pods are attaching to our hull." "Impossible. No species has ever tried to board a Kithara vessel." "The humans are doing it, sir. They're cutting through our armor right now." Kralvex heard the screaming metal as human tools cut into his ship. Then came the sounds of battle from the lower decks. But these were not the usual sounds of Kithara dominance. His warriors were the ones screaming. A human voice came over the ship's internal communication system. It was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying. "Attention, alien crew. This is Sergeant Kim, United Earth Marines. Your ship is now under human control. You can surrender and be taken prisoner, or you can resist and be turned into alien hamburger. We honestly don't care which." Kralvex activated his personal combat systems. His carapace hardened to maximum density. His razor claws extended to full length. He had killed thousands of enemies in personal combat. No primitive human could match a Mind Reaper warrior. The bridge door exploded inward. Through the smoke came 6 human soldiers in powered armor. They moved like pack hunters, covering each other with practiced ease. Their weapons were crude chemical projectiles, but they fired with deadly accuracy. Kralvex phased through matter, appearing behind the humans. His claws should have torn through their armor like soft flesh. Instead, he struck some kind of energy field that sent pain shooting through his limbs. "Nice try, Bugface," said the lead human, turning to face him. "But we've been watching your tricks. These suits are designed specifically to hurt things like you." The human raised his weapon. Kralvex tried to phase again, but the energy field around the human somehow prevented it. For the first time in his life, a Mind Reaper found himself trapped with no escape. "Wait," he said, his voice distorted by fear. "I surrender. Take me prisoner." The human tilted his head. "You know, that's interesting. A few minutes ago, you were trying to fill our brains with terror. Now you want mercy? Please. I will tell you about Kithara weaknesses. I will help you fight my own people." Sergeant Kim called one of the other humans. "What do you think?" Sergeant Kim stared at Kralvex for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I think this thing just learned something important," Kim said. "It learned the difference between prey and predators." Back on the flagship, Captain Zethkar received the reports from Mars with growing disbelief. The Mind Reapers, his most elite warriors, had been completely defeated. Not just beaten, but humiliated. The humans had captured 12 ships intact and taken prisoners. "Sir," Vexithal said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zethkar stared at the tactical display. Similar reports were coming from the attacks on other human colonies. The asteroid miners had turned their belt into a weapons platform. The moon base was broadcasting human music that somehow interfered with Kithara communication systems. Even the space stations around the gas giants were fighting back with improvised weapons. "Captain?" Vexthal pressed. For the first time in 3,000 years of Kithara dominance, Captain Zethkar was afraid. Not afraid of death. but afraid of the possibility that his species was not the apex predators they believed themselves to be. "Prepare the fleet for full assault on Earth," he ordered. "All ships, maximum firepower. We end this now." But deep in his mind, a terrible thought was growing. What if the humans were right? What if the Kythera had been hunting sheep for so long that they had forgotten how to fight real predators? As his fleet moved toward the blue-green world, Zethkar could hear human transmissions on all frequencies. They were not begging for mercy or expressing fear of the approaching armada. They were singing war songs from their primitive past, updated with new verses about hunting aliens. The apex predators of the galaxy were about to learn a very painful lesson about evolution. The main Kythera fleet hung in space above Earth like a storm cloud of death. 600 ships, each one capable of destroying cities. Captain Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue world that had caused him so much trouble. "Captain," Vexthul reported, "all ships are in position. We can begin orbital bombardment on your command." Zethkar nodded slowly. The humans had proven more troublesome than expected, but this was the end. No species could survive the concentrated firepower of the entire Kythera battle fleet. Earth would burn and the galaxy would remember why the Kythera were feared. "Sir?" the communications officer called. "We're receiving another transmission from the planet. Ignore it. Begin the bombardment." "Captain, I think you should hear this." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the main screen, but she was not on a military base or spaceship. She stood in what looked like a city street, surrounded by human civilians. Men, women, and children of all ages stood behind her, and none of them looked afraid. "Captain Zethkar," Chen said calmly, "before you start shooting, I want you to understand something about humans. We've been studying your species since our first encounter. We know how you think, how you fight, and most importantly, how you feed. Your studies will not help you now, human. Prepare to join the 847 species we have already conquered." "That's just it," Chen replied. "We've been talking to some of those species. The ones you didn't completely wipe out. They've been very helpful." Behind Chen, the crowd of humans began to smile. It was not a pleasant sight. "You see, Bugface, you made a fundamental error in judgment. You assumed humans were just another prey species. But Earth is what we call a death world. For millions of years, everything on our planet tried to kill us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, plagues, predators, natural disasters. We didn't just survive all that. We thrived." Zethkar clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "Your world's history means nothing. You face the full might of the Kythera collective now." "Actually, that's where you're wrong again." Chen's smile became sharper. "You see, we've been preparing for this moment since your first scout ships arrived. And we learned something very interesting about your feeding habits." "What are you talking about?" "You feed on fear, terror, and despair. But what happens when those emotions aren't available? What happens when your prey refuses to be afraid?" Zethkar felt a strange unease growing in his chest. Around him, his bridge crew shifted nervously. The human was building toward something, and the anticipation was making even veteran Kythera warriors uncomfortable. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "the targeting systems are malfunctioning. We're getting interference from somewhere. Find the source and eliminate it." Chen's voice continued from the speakers. "You know what the funny thing is? All those species you conquered, they were peaceful. Farmers, artists, philosophers. They never learned to fight back because they never had to. But humans, we've been fighting each other for our entire history. We know every dirty trick, every tactical advantage, every way to hurt an enemy. The interference with the weapon systems grew worse. Across the fleet, Kythera ships found their targeting computers failing. Their communication systems scrambled, their sensors showing false readings." "What's happening?" Zethkar demanded. His technical officer looked up from his station, confusion clear in his multiple eyes. "Captain, it appears the humans have been broadcasting some kind of signal since we arrived. It's affecting our ship systems on a quantum level." "Impossible. Human technology is primitive." "Not anymore," Chen said, her voice now coming from speakers throughout the ship. "You see, we had a few weeks to study the wreckage from your ships. We learned a lot about Kythera technology, including how to disrupt it." The lights on the bridge flickered. Throughout the fleet, similar problems were occurring. Kythera ships designed to be invincible weapons of terror were slowly being disabled by signals from a primitive human world. "But that's not even the best part," Chen continued. "The best part is what we learned about your feeding habits. You get stronger when your enemies are afraid. But what happens when you encounter the opposite of fear? There is no opposite of fear, Zethkar said, but his voice lacked conviction. Sure there is. It's called confidence, and humans have plenty of that. The main screen changed to show images from across Earth. In every city, in every country, humans were gathering in the streets, but they were not cowering in terror. They were celebrating. Parties, festivals, block parties. People were dancing, singing, and laughing as if the alien fleet above them was some kind of entertainment. You want to know what humans do when faced with impossible odds? Chen asked. We throw a party. We sing songs. We tell jokes. And then we figure out how to beat the impossible odds. Vexthal staggered, his hand clutching his thorax. Captain, I feel sick. Something is wrong with the fear-feeding mechanism. Other Kythera throughout the ship were experiencing the same symptoms. Instead of feeding on human fear, they were being overwhelmed by human confidence, joy, and anticipation. The emotions that made them strong were nowhere to be found. In their place was something that made them weak. All ships, Zethkar ordered. Ignore the system failures. Fire all weapons manually. But as Kythera gunners tried to target Earth, they found human ships rising from the planet's surface. Not the crude vessels they had fought before, but sleek new designs built with technology, reverse-engineered from captured Kythera ships. Surprise, Chen's voice called as human fighters swarmed the alien fleet. Did you really think we spent 3 weeks just sitting around? We've been building new toys. The human ships moved like nothing Zethkar had ever seen. They used Kythera phase-shifting technology, but somehow did it better than the original designers. They struck from impossible angles, disappeared when fired upon, and coordinated their attacks with inhuman precision. How are they doing this? Vexthal gasped, watching human fighters tear through Kythera formations. They're using our own technology against us, Zethkar realized. But how did they master it so quickly? The answer came from Chen's next transmission. You want to know the difference between Kythera and humans? You spent 3,000 years conquering sheep. We spent 3,000 years fighting wolves. When we capture enemy technology, we don't just copy it, we improve it. Human ships were boarding Kythera vessels across the fleet, but these were not desperate boarding actions. They were coordinated assaults by teams that knew exactly where to strike. Every Kythera weakness, every design flaw, every tactical limitation had been studied and exploited. Sir, a warrior called from the rear of the bridge. Humans have breached the lower decks. They're fighting their way toward the bridge. Zethkar could hear the sounds of battle echoing through his ship. But for the first time in Kythera history, it was his people who were screaming. Human voices could be heard over the ship's communication system, calling out tactical updates in calm, professional tones. Squad Alpha, Level 5 is secure, moving to Level 6. Bravo team, we have the engine room. Beginning shutdown procedures. Charlie Squadron, watch your 6. These bugs can phase through walls. Copy that, Charlie. Switching to quantum disruptors. The humans had weapons designed specifically to hurt Kythera, armor that could resist their claws, shields that prevented phase shifting, and most disturbing of all, they fought with the practiced ease of professional soldiers. Captain, Vexthal said, his voice barely a whisper. We need to retreat. Retreat? Zethkar stared at his lieutenant. The Kythera do not retreat. Then we die here. Look around, sir. Half our fleet is disabled or captured. The humans are hunting us through our own ships, and they're enjoying it. It was true. Human laughter could be heard over the communication channels as they systematically dismantled the galaxy's most feared military force. They were not fighting desperately for survival. They were not driven by fear or hatred. They were having fun. The bridge doors exploded inward. Through the smoke came a squad of human marines in powered armor. Their leader removed her helmet, revealing a young woman with short blonde hair and bright green eyes. She looked around the bridge with the casual interest of a tourist. Captain Zethkar, I presume, she said. I'm Lieutenant Sarah Morrison, United Earth Space Marines. You're under arrest for war crimes against 847 species. Zethkar extended his combat claws and activated his personal shields. He was still a mighty Kythera warrior. No human could match him in single combat. I am Captain Zethkar of the Kythera Collective, he announced. I have conquered worlds and devoured the fear of billions. You are nothing but prey. Lieutenant Morrison tilted her head, studying him like a scientist examining an interesting specimen. You know what your problem is? You keep using that word. Prey. I don't think you know what it means. She moved faster than any human should have been able to move. Her powered armor enhanced her natural speed to superhuman levels. Zethkar tried to phase through her attack, but found his abilities blocked by the same quantum fields the humans had used on Mars. See? Prey animals run when threatened, Morrison continued, dodging his claws with casual ease. But humans don't run. We hunt. Her weapon fired some kind of energy pulse that sent agony through Zethkar's nervous system. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, Captain Zethkar sat in a human prison cell, staring through transparent aluminum at the blue world that had changed everything. His mighty form was contained by energy fields that prevented his phase-shifting ability. The apex predator of the galaxy had become a specimen in a zoo. "Good morning, Captain," came a familiar voice. Admiral Chen entered the observation area, carrying a datapad and what appeared to be a cup of human coffee. She looked remarkably calm for someone who had just defeated the most feared military force in galactic history. "Come to gloat, human?" Zethkar asked, his voice bitter with defeat. "Actually, I came to talk," Chen replied, settling into a chair. "You see, we've been having some interesting conversations with your former subordinates. The ones who survived, anyway." Zethkar said nothing. Of the 600 ships in his fleet, less than 50 had escaped. The rest had been captured or destroyed by humans who fought like demons possessed. His mighty Kithara collective was scattered across the galaxy, no longer the unified force of terror it had been for millennia. "Your Lieutenant Vex Thule has been particularly helpful," Chen continued. "He's told us all about Kithara society, your methods of conquest, your feeding habits. Very educational." "Traitor," Zethkar spat. "I prefer to think of him as a realist. He understands something you still don't. The age of Kithara dominance is over." Chen activated her datapad, showing images from across the galaxy. Kythra outposts under attack, former slave species rising in rebellion. The great empire that had ruled for 3,000 years was crumbling. "Word of your defeat has spread quickly," Chen explained. "Turns out when you base your entire civilization on fear, it doesn't take much to bring it down. The species you conquered are learning that the mighty Kithara can be beaten, and they're using human tactics to do it." The images showed battles across a dozen star systems. The Meridians, who had cowered before Kithara might just months ago, were now attacking with captured human weapons. The peaceful Altarians had formed military units trained by human advisors. Even the gentle Cetacean Collective was hunting Kithara ships through their ocean worlds. "This is temporary," Zethkar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The Kithara will regroup. We will adapt, will you?" Chen asked. "Because I've been thinking about that. See, you spent 3,000 years as apex predators, but you made a fatal mistake. You got comfortable." She stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at Earth's surface. "Every species you conquered was peaceful. Farmers, artists, philosophers. They'd never learned to fight because they'd never needed to, so you forgot what real warfare looks like. You forgot that predators can evolve too. Humans are just one species," Zethkar protested. "You cannot police the entire galaxy," Chen smiled. "We don't need to. We just need to teach the galaxy how to hunt Kithara." She activated her datapad again, this time showing a different set of images. Human instructors working with alien military units. Workshops where former Kithara slaves learned to build weapons from captured technology. Training facilities where species that had never known war were learning the art of violence. "The thing about humans is that we're excellent teachers," Chen continued. "We've been at war for our entire history. We know every trick, every tactic, every way to hurt an enemy, and we're sharing all of that knowledge." "You're creating a galaxy of killers," Zethkar accused. "No. We're creating a galaxy where species can defend themselves. There's a difference." The door opened and Lieutenant Morrison entered, now wearing the uniform of a galactic military advisor. She nodded to Admiral Chen and studied Zethkar with professional interest. "How's our guest doing?" Morrison asked. "Still having trouble accepting reality," Chen replied. "He seems to think the Kithara will make a comeback." Morrison laughed. "That's not going to happen. We've been analyzing their military structure for months. They're completely dependent on fear-based feeding. Without that, they're just big bugs with sharp claws." "Explain," Zethkar demanded. Morrison sat down across from his cell. "Gladly. See, your entire species evolved to feed on the fear of prey animals. That made you excellent at terrorizing peaceful species. But it also made you dependent on that fear for your strength. When you can't feed properly, you get weak." She gestured to Zethkar's reduced form. Over the months of imprisonment, he had lost much of his imposing size and strength. Without a constant diet of terror, his body was returning to its normal proportions. But that's not even your biggest weakness, Morrison continued. Your real problem is that you never learned to fight equals. Every battle you've won for 3,000 years was against inferior opponents. You have no experience with real warfare. We conquered 847 star systems, Zethkar said. You conquered 847 species that were too peaceful to fight back effectively. That's not the same thing. Chen activated her datapad one more time. The images now showed recent battles between human-trained alien forces and Cathera remnants. In every case, the former slaves were winning. The Meridian Defense Force destroyed 3 Cathera cruisers last week, Chen reported. The Altarian Liberation Fleet captured an entire Cathera base without losing a single ship. And the Cetaceans just announced that their space is completely free of Cathera presence. How is this possible? Zethkar asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Because they're not afraid anymore, Morrison explained. Fear was your only real weapon. Once that was gone, you were just another enemy to be defeated. And these species have had 3,000 years of anger to work through. The door opened again and a figure entered that made Zethkar recoil in shock. It was Vexthul, his former lieutenant. But the smaller Cathara now wore a human military uniform and carried himself with new confidence. Hello, Captain, Vexthul said quietly. Traitor, Zethkar snarled. You betray your own species. No, I'm trying to save what's left of it. Vexthul approached the cell. The humans have offered terms to any Cathera willing to renounce conquest and live peacefully. Some of us are accepting. You would become slaves to prey animals. I would become citizens of a galactic community based on cooperation instead of conquest. Vexthul's voice was firm. The humans have shown us a different way to exist. Chen stood. That's actually why I'm here today, Captain. I'm offering you the same choice we've offered all captured Cathara. Renounce your old ways. Help us locate remaining Cathara strongholds, and you can live peacefully on one of the worlds we've set aside for your species. And if I refuse, then you stay here until you die, Morrison said simply. We're not going to execute you, but we're not going to release you either. The galaxy has moved beyond the need for apex predators. Zethkar looked around at the 3 figures representing the new galactic order, a human admiral who had defeated the most feared species in the galaxy, a human soldier who had personally captured him, and one of his own people who had chosen cooperation over conquest. What guarantee do I have that humans won't become the next galactic conquerors? He asked. Chen considered this seriously. None, but I can tell you what makes us different from you. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to make sure nobody else can terrorize it the way you did. Besides, Morrison added, humans are too busy fighting each other to worry about conquering aliens. We've got enough wars of our own. The galaxy is changing, Captain, Vexthul said. The age of apex predators is over. Species are learning to work together to defend each other. Your choice is simple. Evolve or become extinct. Zethkar closed his eyes, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. In less than a year, his species had gone from galactic overlords to refugees. The natural order he had taken for granted his entire life had been overturned by creatures who should have been easy prey. The humans study us, he said finally. They learn our weaknesses and exploit them. What happens when other species do the same to humans? Chen smiled. Then we adapt. That's what humans do best. We've been adapting to threats for millions of years. It's what made us good enough to beat you. She gathered her datapad and prepared to leave. Think about my offer, Captain. The galaxy doesn't need apex predators anymore, but it could use teachers who understand what happens when species get too comfortable with power. As the 3 figures left, Zethkar was alone with his thoughts. Outside his window, Earth continued its rotation, a small blue world that had changed the course of galactic history. On that world, humans continued their daily lives, probably already planning for the next challenge, the next threat, the next impossible odds to overcome. For the first time in his life, Zethkar understood fear. Not the terror he had fed on from other species, but the deep, existential fear of irrelevance. The Cathara had been the apex predators of the galaxy for 3,000 years, but evolution never stopped, and something more apex had emerged from a death world called Earth. The galaxy's most dreaded species had indeed found their match. And their match was teaching the rest of the galaxy that there was always room for something higher on the food chain. In the distance, he could hear human children playing in a schoolyard. their laughter carrying on the wind. They were the next generation of the species that had humbled the mighty Cathara,